Hello to all your participants and welcome to this September edition of the conversation between Rev Dr Francis Macnab and Rev Dr Steven Koski. This conversation is titled The 3 A's of Soulful Aging. When I saw the topic, I thought, goodness me, this is a bit heavy. Then I thought, that's a bit of a defeatist attitude. Let's hear what they have to say and make the decision later as to whether it was heavy or not. So I'll now hand over to Steven and Francis, and I shall listen with bated breath. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. What a joy it is to have this opportunity again, Francis, to be in conversation. It's always just an extreme gift for me to be able to spend this time with you. I want to begin with a quote by Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest who I'm amazed, quite frankly, that the Catholic Church hasn't excommunicated him. But Richard Rohr said that we spend our lifetime creating the containers of our life. And sometimes we just don't pay enough attention to what we've actually placed in those containers. And then we get to the later chapters in our lives and we begin to wonder whether our container is actually holding, what matters most in life, holding the things that we needed to be holding in our later years. So in one way I understand that quote is that we spend the first half of our life gathering, acquiring, only to spend the second half of our life, I think, compelled to empty much of what we've been gathering and what we've been carrying in order to make a little more room for, quite frankly, for what's essential, for what matters most. So in our early years, we accumulate. But in later years, I think if we're wise, we divest. Now, I think both are actually important parts of life's journey. But the struggle, I think, is when we're still accumulating, when our souls long for divestment and emptying. That we might be spending the majority of our lives kind of focusing outward. And in our later years, when it's perhaps time to look inward, there's nothing there. Carl Jung wrote, "One cannot live in the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning just may be of little importance in the evening. And what in the morning was true will in the evening perhaps have become a lie." In other words, I think what worked for us, perhaps worked well for us in the first half of our life, may actually be inadequate to meet the challenges of our mature years. I remember a conversation I had with writer and educator Parker Palmer, where he said to me, he said, there comes a time as you grow older, that you realize the task of life is no longer to be successful at whatever cost. And then something deep inside realizes that maybe the task of life now is to be faithful. Faithful to the needs of your soul, faithful to what's most important in life, faithful to the people you love, faithful to healing those wounds that you've been carrying for so many years. faithful to showing up as authentically as you can in the world, generously sharing your gifts and the wisdom that you've gained along the way. I've always loved the phrase from Psalm 42, where the psalmist says, deep calls onto deep. So Francis, as we age, there seems to be an invitation to visit our interior life, to go deeper, as the psalmist said, to listen to the needs of the soul, maybe to empty our container of the many things that we've been carrying, to make room for something else, to make room for what matters most. So I'm curious, how do you understand those words of the psalmist? Deep, calling to deep as we grow older.
Deep calls to deep. I think he's talking about listening at depth, rather than being caught up in the chitter-chatter, the blather of life, to listen to ourselves and the other person at some deeper level. What is he really trying to say? What am I trying to say? What at depth is important when so much can flow back and forth as our chatter every day? It's depth that we're looking for. Would you think?
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that sense of almost this desire for more depth in a way. I mean, our culture can be in many ways so shallow. I mean, there's no doubt that both I think the American and the Australian culture, I think you could argue, are youth-oriented cultures. I mean, I would say they're youth-oriented cultures that value the 3 A's: achievement, affluence, and appearance. And as I quoted Carl Jung earlier, who said, we can't live in the evening of life according to the program of life's morning. You know, maybe as we grow older, we need to center ourselves around new values. You know, values perhaps that have greater depth, values perhaps that aren't externally based, but values that nurture our inner life, our soul, if you like. I mean, I love this quote by Sister Joan Chittister, where she said, you know, this time as we grow older, this is the time to think of higher matters than perpetually trying to look 10 years younger, as wonderful as that may be. She said, rather than putting your focus on trying to look 10 years younger, now is the time to attend to the inner self, she said. These are the years to allow our depth, our interior life to direct what we do and who we are. And I also love the quote by Sherry Anderson, where she said, to ripen, not just grow up, but to keep on maturing through our entire lives takes courage and vulnerability. And she said, you know, we can end up unripe, bitter, not able to reap the fruits of our life because we've allowed life circumstances to overwhelm us, or we get tangled up in culture stories and lies about aging. Or, she said, we can explore and share the tender and bittersweet, ferocious truths of getting old. What do you think about that image, Francis, of ripening as we age?
What do I think about it? I think it's a big call to make on us. How do we do it? Is it possible to always be aware of, are we playing things on the surface, being superficial, or are we talking at depth? It's very difficult at times to know where we are. So perhaps you're putting too much of a demand on me to be at depth or trying to do more than we would ordinarily do in our conversation. So come again. Where do you think we should go?
You know, I actually really like that idea of, I often say you don't have to push a river for it to flow. Sometimes you kind of have to just get in the river and go with it. So maybe depth isn't something that we create, as I wonder if it's something that we invite or we observe or we pay attention to. You know, I'm curious that I really think that the 3 A's of the youth-oriented culture that's all about kind of being shallow, you know, the 3 A's of achievement, affluence, and appearance. I'm wondering if the 3 A's of an elder-oriented culture, or a culture that invites depth, maybe doesn't force depth, but invites depth, might be acceptance, amazement, and appreciation. I mean, I love how you said, you know, maybe it's not helpful to force depth. And I wonder if that's where our first A comes in. Acceptance. I mean, I think vital to our mental and spiritual health is an acceptance of reality. I mean, not necessarily an endorsement of it. We don't have to jump down and go, yay, you know, I'm getting older, so happy about it. But an acceptance of our current reality. Acceptance of the fact that we are growing older. What do you think about that idea of acceptance as being somewhat critical for our emotional and spiritual and mental health?
Right, okay. Well, it's okay up to a point. But we reach a point where we have to say, no, we're going to aspire to something better and keep on aspiring to something bigger, to something beyond us, to something that's richer at depth. So we can continue to do that, I think, rather than just accept it. Okay, as it were, to say, this is old age, so I'm getting old. I sometimes say I'm getting old and getting a bit stupid as well. But then I object and say, wait a minute. But I can aspire to be alive and vigorous and still on target, still with it, as it were.
I mean, I really appreciate that tension and maybe paradox between not necessarily resigning to our current reality, aspiring to something more, but at the same time being realistic. I mean, there's something I was reading recently called the Stockdale paradox. James Stockdale was an admiral in the US Navy. He survived 8 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And Stockdale was asked of who of his fellow prisoners, who were the prisoners that struggled the most in those horrific circumstances? Who are the prisoners that struggled the most to survive? And Stockdale said, surprisingly, he said it was the optimists who struggled to survive. Because he said the optimists were the ones who said, oh, we will definitely be free by Christmas. And Christmas came and went. Oh, we will definitely be free by Easter. And Easter came and went. Oh, we'll be free by the next Christmas. And then the next Christmas came and went. And Stockdale said, you know, those were the ones who struggled. And the way he phrased it, he said they died of a broken heart. And Stockdale said that the ones who somehow found resilience and strength to survive something as horrific as being a prisoner of war were the realists. And he said the realists had three things in common. The first thing is, he said, the realists faced the brutal facts of their current reality. I mean, they accepted where they were and what they were facing. And the second thing, which might be the aspiring piece, they never lost faith that they will somehow prevail. And the third thing he said was they focused on finding joy and beauty and meaning in the moment, in the now, in the midst of their horrific circumstances. They didn't look for some future wished for reality. And maybe that's the aspiring of you know, we can find meaning, we can find hope, we can find joy, we can find beauty in spite of the brutal facts of our current reality. So it seems like, you know, our youth culture kind of lives in the illusion that we can somehow put off growing older. I think the youth culture kind of, you know, all of the cosmetic stuff tries to deny the brutal facts of aging. The Stockdale paradox seems to be saying that you can accept the brutal facts of your current reality and look for something more and find joy in the midst of your reality. And that's where joy and beauty and meaning are to be found. Not somewhere else, not in some wished for future reality, but right here, right now. So it seems the paradox is that aging can be brutal, it can be hard, and it also can be beautiful and wonderful. And it's in accepting our reality, perhaps, that we can find the joy and that something more you were talking about in that reality. So what are your thoughts around the Stockdale paradox?
I think it's difficult because frequently people's reality is fairly brutal. The reality is that we're getting older and I'm aching and I can't remember and I can't do the things I used to do. And I am limping around, illustrating the fact that I am now old. And it's very kind of you to tell me I should jump for joy, but as I get older, I can't find much joy. So how can I jump for it?
Or jump, for that matter, yeah.
Exactly. Both are taken from me. I can neither jump nor can I find the joy. So what do we then do when the reality is such that it's not what we thought it would be? It's not at all what we hoped it would be. And so we're dealing with a fairly difficult future. What is our future? The future is to say, here I am. And sometimes this is not an easy thing to do. Not easy to grow old. It's all very well for A, B, and C to say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and making me and you and somebody else feel inadequate. But it's how do we cope with ourselves when life is not all happiness, not all strength, not all happy, you're lucky. We're dealing with a reality. The old age, as one man said to me, old age is a terrible thing. So what do you do with that? What do you do when someone says it's a terrible thing to grow old?
You know, I think there's the challenge, and I wonder if that's really what the Stockdale paradox is to be able to say, yes, it can be. And yes, maybe your reality is that it is hard, brutally hard. And here's the paradox, and also the second A that we're talking about. Acceptance, and the second A is amazement. So I'm curious about, okay, for the person who said, old age is terrible, it won't do me a lot of good to say, well, no, it's not. Be an optimist. I think to be able to say, yeah, it can be. It really can be. And by the way, the breath you just took, sheer gift. And even in the midst of the terrible, there can be beautiful. I think the challenge is when we deny the terrible in search of the beautiful and we pretend that everything's okay. Well, everything isn't okay. But even in the midst of it not being okay, there can be moments of sheer beauty. I love the poem When Death Comes by Mary Oliver, where she wrote, when death comes, when it's over, I want to be able to say that all of my life, I was a bride, married to amazement. I was a bridegroom, taking the world into my arms. Abraham Heschel said the spiritual life is living your life with radical amazement. So there's the challenge. Can it be terrible and amazing at the same time? That would be my question. Because Heschel says the spiritual life is somehow living your life in radical amazement, taking nothing for granted. There's a tendency in youth to take life for granted. You assume there's always going to be a tomorrow. So you don't notice the gift of today. I think as we do age, our sense of time changes. We accept, life doesn't go on forever. We accept that, we could be in the third act of our life. And this day, this is the day that matters. This breath, this is the breath that matters. I have a friend right now, a very close friend, who's in the ICU on a ventilator because of COVID. My age, vaccinated, still got COVID and is fighting for his life. And it took me back a couple of years ago when my wife was on a ventilator for a month, for 5 weeks. And I remember just sitting by her bedside, listening to the wheezing rhythms of the ventilator, day after day, thinking what an absolute gift breath is, and how I take that gift of breath for granted. I mean, as my wife was on the ventilator, I realized that breathing is a miracle, is a gift. I mean, I love what Thich Nhat Hanh said. He said that people usually consider walking on water a miracle. I think the real miracle is not to walk on water, but walk on the earth. Because every day we're engaged in a miracle we don't even recognize. The white clouds, the green leaves, the curious eyes of a child, our own eyes, our own breath, all gift, all miracle. So is it possible for it to be both terrible and wonderful? You know, is it possible for it to be both really, really, really hard and beautiful? Is it possible to have every kind of joint in your body ache and you're struggling to get around and still realize that, wow, this moment right now, right here, is a gift, and to seize that gift and not take it for granted? What do you think? Is it possible to do both?
I think you and I both know that some people can do that. Can I do that? I doubt that I would respond as in the same way as many other people have been able to show that life can be like that. So I think we're dealing with two possibilities. One is that we can take what is served up to us and make something of it and respond with courage or with a good spirit. And there's the other side where everything is so horrible that life is not good, that we prefer to be not here. It is so heavy or so bad. So how do we cope with these two possibilities? One is, yes, we can see life as there is a possibility. But the other is we can't see the possibility. There's only aching and anguish. All those other A's, if you like, aching, anguish, anxiety. How do we cope with that anxiety that doesn't go away? It's not so easy. And many people would say, it's all very well for you to talk, but I have to cope with this. I have to live with this. When I prefer it to be very different. So when life is not showing too many bright lights, we have to see how can we get a little bit of light to shine.
You know, I think you're right, and I think that is where the A of acceptance is so important. And I think it is so important because sometimes we have people in our lives that will say to us, well, it's not that bad. Or so-and-so down the street has it far worse than you have it. And I think there is something powerful and healing for someone to come alongside and to be able to say, yeah, it's hard. And I can see how hard it is for you. So I wonder together if we can find just a little bit of light. You know, I think I shared before the analogy of the stained glass window. And so this beautiful stained glass window, colorful stained glass window, but one of the panes becomes opaque and it suddenly becomes just black. And so that person you're describing who sees only the darkness, that person puts their nose against that pane of glass and only sees the darkness and can't see anything else. I wonder if we could help that person to take a couple steps back and to say, yes, it is dark, it is hard, it is a challenge. I hear how much you hurt, and I hear how frustrating it is, or I hear how sad it is. But I wonder if there are other panes of glass that we can also at the same time attend to. So I think it involves, holding our pain and struggle tenderly, but also trying to help folks and even ourselves, be open to where the light might be shining. It might be in the, in the way that the tummy of a baby jiggles when they laugh. It might be the flower that's on the table in front of them and noticing the colors. It might be their favorite painting and drawing their attention to their favorite painting. It might be music, their favorite music, and being reminded of how that music speaks to the depths of their soul. So how can we do both of those things, I guess is what I'm saying, of allow it to be hard and know it can be beautiful at the same time.
I kept fearing that you were going to say at some point, yes, but. And we who are sitting outside a person's predicament, we who are outside their pain, are likely to say, yes, but a new day will dawn. Yes, but it won't be so bad tomorrow. Right. Yes, but you've got a few things you can call upon. Yes, but you've got friends. Yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. And those who are in pain say, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
All I know is the pain. What will I do with this pain? And you can't give them the answer because it's not your pain. You would say, yes, but 20 times. But it doesn't help because it's not your pain. So what do we say to that person?
In some ways, I'm not sure we say anything to that person. Because as you just said, words won't make it better. Maybe it's being a positive presence to them. Maybe it's being the person that moves alongside them and is willing to witness their pain. I honestly believe that when if somebody witnesses your pain and doesn't try to find the silver lining, doesn't try to minimize it, but it's just there to witness it, does it make it any less painful? Probably not. But it might make it a little more bearable because you're not kind of carrying that alone.
It's true, you see, you're going to come and say, it's not so bad. If you've got somebody else suffering with you, it's not so bad if someone will listen to me. But the person who's got an acute pain, really acute pain, they say, that doesn't help me. What can you tell me that will help me at this moment? Where is the effective anesthetic, as it were, when no anesthetic works?
And I think I want to be clear that I'm not saying it's not so bad. I think I am saying it's bad. I see that. I hear that. And I think it's the difference between if somebody's in a dark cave of their pain It's the difference between me trying to pull them into the light versus me being willing to crawl into the dark cave and just sit alongside them. And I don't have words to say outside of saying and being willing to go into the dark cave. And this is, I think, something that we can offer one another. This is the gift I think we can offer one another, is to not to be Pollyannish and pull them into the light, you know, look for the silver lining. It's not so bad. It'll be okay. Tomorrow will be a better day. Because we're really only pulling them into the light to make ourselves feel better. Because we're uncomfortable with their pain. I think the difference is actually being willing to go into the dark cave and sit alongside them when we don't have the answers, when we don't have anything to say, and just sit there. Because I think one of the things that says is you're loved. You're not alone. You are loved. I remember when my father died, I got all of the people giving me the platitudes. You're in my thoughts. You're in my prayers, whatever it happens to be. One friend showed up at my door with a 6-pack of beer and a pizza, gave me a hug, and said, "This really sucks." And we sat down and drank beer and ate pizza for 2 hours, and not another word was said. Several moments, I just allowed the tears to go down my face because he gave me permission to grieve. I didn't have to pretend it was okay. I was hurting. And just his silent presence and his witness to my grief allowed me to feel that pain. And he got up and left. My dad was still dead. My heart was still broken. But somehow just his willingness to crawl into the dark cave and sit alongside me and allow me to be as I was made a difference.
But supposing I say, but I don't want to go into that black cave. I don't want to be there. Even though you might find it helpful in a funny kind of way, you might find it somewhat soothing. I don't want to go there. I may have been there sometime before, but I don't want to go there again. What do we say to that person who says, it's all very well for you to talk about sharing my pain, but you can't share my pain. My pain is my pain. My anguish is my anguish. And no matter how much you say, oh, I'm going to climb in there and be alongside, you can't do that. So the important thing perhaps is to shut up. Be quiet, as you said yourself, to just be quiet and say, we'll just wait on this. What do we believe? We believe it will pass. Something is going to take place and the pain will subside. We know that. But right now, I don't believe that. It's intense. It's beyond explanation. So let me suffer for a time and see how we get on after that. Sometimes we do have to be present not only to each other, but be really present to that pain so that you know it without talking about it. I know it. I've been there. I can't find words to soften it, but I know what it's like to be there. Back to you.
Right, okay.
Is it okay though? Because I could say, gotcha. I've put you in a spot where you don't have an answer. If I'm the suffering person and you're the helper, you're going to reach a point where you don't have an answer.
Yep. And
you can't say, right, okay. So what now? What need we say anything?
Well, we're talking about soulful aging, and you just said, need we say anything? And I think sometimes we say too much. And sometimes our silence can be, let me put it again, you're exactly right that I can't share your pain. And I think even being willing to crawl inside the cave and sit alongside you is not sharing your pain, because your pain is your pain. You're exactly right. Probably the worst words you could possibly say to someone is, I know how you feel. I mean, no, you don't know how I feel. But what I'm willing to do is sit alongside you as you feel. And I'm not going to leave you. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere. I had another experience where I was in deep, deep grief, in a really dark place. And I was with someone, and just a tear was coming down my face. This friend took her finger to my tear and then went to her face and just went like that. Not a word was said, by the way, not a word was said. But somehow, and again, that didn't make me feel better. I didn't feel better. But somehow I just had this sense that this person was with me. And that mattered. It just mattered that that person was with me.
And you'll notice what has come out of that is a very important memory. Mm-hmm. Memory, sooner or later, comes to our aid. And we carry a memory away with us. She didn't do anything that would relieve your anguish there and then. But you're talking about it now, maybe months later, maybe years later, and a memory. Memory is an extraordinary miracle. We can hear that memory coming, and it changes everything. Of course, it can be a dreadful experience. We remember the memory, and it was so painful that I'll never forget it. It was so hurtful. But sooner or later, the memory is going to move across there, from there to there, from there to there. So memory has its own miracle of being able to move from being very much on top of us, very much inside us, to getting outside us, being able to talk about it as something over there, something we once had, time, place, people, are all part of the healing power of memory. I think it's important, we who are sometimes the helpers need to bear in mind that rather than rushing to too much, not rushing, or rather than feeling the need to help the person, to simply and painfully take the memory for a moment and know that that memory will come to heal or will come to be different from what it is at the moment. And that's an extraordinary thing, really.
And I'm curious whether that in some ways leads to the third A. You know, we talked about acceptance and amazement. The third A is appreciation. And I'm wondering somehow whether those memories that you're talking about, the most powerful memories, the most healing memories, I'm wondering if they have to do with people and appreciating the people in our life. I mean, we both have had the sacred privilege to spend time with folks on their deathbed. And I don't know about you, but I've never heard anybody talk to me about what they achieved or how much money they have or their appearance for that matter. But the memories that I hear people talking about at that moment is a deep appreciation for the people in their life, who they loved, who cared for them. And if there are regrets, often they say, I wish I would have forgiven more easily, or I wish I would have shown more appreciation for people. So I'm really curious whether this sense of appreciation is important for that depth we're talking about, is perhaps even important to get us through the terrible, to recognize even some of the people in our life are gifts. I just read a study of 1,000 married couples to understand why their marriages were joyless or are full of conflict and hurt. And the study said that the primary reason of unhappiness in marriage, in this study anyway, is the feeling of being unappreciated, taken for granted. I mean, you ask any employee what is the source of low morale in the workplace, they're likely going to say being taken for granted, feeling like what I have to contribute isn't noticed or appreciated. So I think there's something deep in us. I think I wonder, and I'm curious, even when it's terrible, I think there is something deep in us that desires to be seen, valued, loved, that we spend, maybe the wisdom of aging is no longer spending our energy building our containers, trying to prove our worth. Maybe the wisdom of aging is appreciating the worth of others. Taking time to appreciate the people in our life, to express gratitude, to see them, to value them, to find simple ways to love them. What are your thoughts on the role of appreciating?
I think there's a tendency to put a demand on me to appreciate you, to appreciate him.
Please do.
But will it help, you see? Deep calls to deep. You see, we'll pause and say, what is that depth? Will be most important. It's a feeling that there is depth between us. There is depth beyond us. There is depth around us, and it holds us together. And it's that sense of being held or being in a feeling zone that we all can then cope with the worst things. some of the worst things in life, they require, sooner or later, somebody to hold us with a good feeling, or that we can feel that a good feeling will come back to us. Deep calls to deep, at the sound of the cataracts. How do we hear depth calling to depth, even in our worst times, and also in our best times? Both are important. And sometimes we skid away from one and rush into the other, or pushed into that one and skid away from the other. How do we hear both speaking to us of deeper things, of better things, perhaps wiser things, whatever? Oliver Twist was once, in his anguish, wanted more food. At last somebody said, Oliver Twist has asked for more. I think we all ask for more. We want a little bit more love, a little bit more care, a little bit more kindness, a little bit more depth. And when we touch that, just brush against it, we can feel the energy of that which is in us and that which is beyond us. That which comes to us and that which draws us out towards us. So it's to allow ourselves to be part of that energy, healing energy, healing words, healing thoughts, healing images. We all need them.
And I'm curious whether one of the ways to experience that something more, I mean, you were saying that, I totally agree that we all want to be seen and we all want to be appreciated. And I'm curious if one of the ways is somehow to convince the person who is in the midst of terrible. You know, I know when I had my hip replaced, I was the world's worst patient because the whole world centered around me and the pain in my hip. And that's all I could think about, all I could focus on. And your goal in life, you know, your role in life is to serve me right now. You know, I had a little bell to ring to please give me this, please bring me that, please do that. So everything became centered around me. And as I began to heal, I began to start looking less focused inwardly on me and how much pain I was in and how horrible I felt and how miserable I was. And I began to open up and look outward again. And I'm curious whether that's part of the healing process, is to find ways to notice others, find ways to appreciate others, find ways to contribute to others, find ways to say thank you. I mean, Meister Eckhart said, the only prayer you ever need in life is 2 words. The only prayer you ever need your whole life is 2 words. Thank you. You know, what if we were to kind of shift our focus from inward to outward, to notice and appreciate the people in our life and say thank you. Notice the gifts that we generally take for granted, you know, that people provide us each and every day, and to say thank you. To kind of to write 20 thank you cards this week. You know, a lost art, actually taking a pen, writing on a piece of paper, and just say, hey, I just wanted you to know you're an important person in my life. I just wanted to pause for a moment and just to let you know how much I appreciate about you. So what's really interesting is if we did that, and if we sent that, if we put a stamp on it and mailed it, I'm guessing the person who received that would be amazed and it would make a huge difference. But what I'm suggesting is even putting the pen to paper and writing the thank you note, our energy shifts. We begin to experience a change. Now, does that make the terrible go away? No. But I'm wondering if our energy shifted, as you said, to participate more in that kind of energy, it might help us live with that terrible a little more resiliently.
I think too, we need to join with that thought, the power of memory. We often overlook the fact that the memory is there, we wish it weren't. But sometimes we come back and look at memory again and say, memory provides us with good points of the journey. We remember the good things that happened to us, the good words that were spoken to us, the good pathways that we're able to take, the good people that we met. So those memories, sometimes memories can be a very troublesome part of our life. But as we look again, we find that call in those good memories, call in the memories that lift us again to see life in a different direction, call in the memories that tell us who we once were, who were the people that helped us be what we were. And all of a sudden, the world changes. Memory is a most powerful healing energy, as well as being that other energy of hurtful energy. We can turn it around and call upon memory to heal us, to lift us, to change us. Try that.
My brother is in town, whom I haven't seen in about 5 years. And we got into a conversation around some of our childhood experiences that were focused on perhaps less than pleasant experiences. But talking with him, he also helped me remember some things that I had forgotten about my own childhood. Some things that were really quite delightful that I had just forgotten. So yeah, it does make a difference. And what a difference it made to have someone come along and invite me into thinking about some of that in a different way. Which also relates, I think also connects to appreciation. What if we kind of devoted ourselves to creating good memories? You know, to reaching out to one another and realizing that, you know, there can still be, we can still create good memories for moving forward. So what can we do today? What can I do today to reach out to you to help you create a good memory for tomorrow? Which also, I think also can be important.
Of course, that's really true, very right. Good words become part of the memory tank. So you speak good words to me, and it changes the way I see the past, the way I see myself in the present. Good words, good thoughts, good images, good people we meet, all very, very important part of what I said before, to remember, those good things that have come our way and will come our way again. So thank you for the memories that you give me.
Well, I was just going to say that what a gift it is for me to have this opportunity to talk with you, but also to be able to talk with you about things that matter, to be able to talk with you about things of depth, you know, not necessarily to talk about the weather or how Port Power did, although I'm pretty ecstatic about that, but to you know, to talk about the deep, calling onto deep, So for me, this moment, just these few moments that we have together, I really appreciate, and are creating good memories for me, but are really, really feeding my soul. You are a very important person in my life, and I really appreciate you. You have made a profound impact in who I am and how I understand what I'm to be about in life. And I'm forever grateful for the role you played in my life. So that's me taking my pen to paper and writing a thank you note to you. And instead of sending it, I'm offering it verbally. So can I close with a blessing from John O'Donohue?
Right.
John O'Donohue said, the soul of aging is to come home to yourself. So he titled this blessing, To Come Home to Yourself. May all that is unforgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquilities. And may all that is unlived in you blossom into a future graced with love. May it be so.
And let me speak a word too. I too thought, what can we say to conclude? And I wrote a few things down about memory. May you remember the good parts of the journey we've been on. May you remember the good songs that we've heard and that we've sung. May you remember the good people that we met and that we will continue to meet. May you remember the good words that were spoken, the good words that you heard, and the good words that we all can speak to each other. May you remember these good things of life. And there are many good things in life to remember. So thank you for today. Thank you.
That was not as difficult to go through as I thought it might be. And so it just goes to show that a more positive attitude on life can often lead to some very, very interesting things. A few things that I picked up from it. It did remind me that one thing that I've learned, and Judy and I for that matter, from this pandemic lockdown that we have, this is number 6 we're in, I think, at the moment, and not travelling too well with it because we're getting too many of them. But the thing is, to do it now, do not assume that there will be a tomorrow. Going on then with what Stephen and Francis have been talking about, I picked up on the 3 A's of youth. I think we are all relatively aware of them. We've certainly, I'm sure we've been through them, of achievement, affluence and appearance. But I really like the 3 A's for us older people, the mature people, the ripening people, the acceptance, the Stockdale paradox. It shows that there is optimism available to you, even in the most brutal of realities. Amazement. It brought out in me a thought, and this comes back to Francis' memory and remembrance. While out walking, we often have a look at the sky, the cloud formations, and discuss what they might look like and get a huge amount of appreciation from them. And then suddenly we notice the wattles are blooming, or the birds are singing, the currawongs are warbling away in the bush. It all leads then to the appreciation of what we have in life. not what we might have, not what we could have had, but what we have. That's the important thing. And also to not just be appreciated, but let people know that you appreciate them. And memories, good and bad. Let's focus on the good. And while Stephen gave us a very nice blessing from John O'Donoghue, it reminded me, or during the course of the discussions, I was reminded of a blessing that was penned by one Dr. Francis Macnab some years ago. And I'd like to just share the first few lines of that. May the God you see in all the colours of creation create in you a sense of awe and wonder. And my own little postscript on it is, and keep wondering. Thank you all very much for sharing our September conversation with Francis and Stephen. And I look forward to seeing you or to having you all see us again in a month's time. Thank you and cheerio.